biggest private investment in the history of North Dakota. It's not in Fargo. It's not in Wahpeton. It's not in Grand Forks. It's right there in the city of Williston. Thanks to Saralon, they are doing a big gas to liquids project. Just phase one, just a little 2.8 billion, just a 2.8 billion little drop for phase one. And join us now from Williston Economic Development. He may even touch on the biggest private investment in the state, in the history of the state as well. Shawn Wenko joining us again. Shawn, welcome back to the show, man. Great to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be on the show again.
Man, when we heard that last week, it honestly kind of took my breath away. I know we got other stuff to get into, what you're doing with the Star Fund, but because it's such a, in my opinion, big deal. I know in Williston, it's kind of like, yeah, another one of these, another one of those, but the biggest in the history of the state even has to kind of just take your breath away.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's a good example of what's happening out here. When you'll hear me say this over and over again. I know I've said it previously, but this is almost kind of the second boom that we're facing, and this boom being value added. So it's these companies are finding ways to take oil and gas byproduct, create some value out of it, and investing in Western North Dakota. And Saralon's a prime example. And that Saralon project, that's just the first. I mean, if you were to talk with the state of North Dakota, there's several projects being discussed right now that can kind of work off of each other, including the Saralon. So I think we're going to see a lot more happen throughout the years. It's not a small project. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's a great first step as we continue to kind of build into the next generation here for us.
Well, what's great is you hear about a $2.8 billion project. It's obviously going to bring in more jobs, more money flowing through the economy. Thus, you're going to need other restaurants, clothing stores, different entrepreneurs to show up and meet those needs. And that's where something that I think you and your organization do such a tremendous job holding entrepreneurs' hands through the process, helping them get some capital. And you've got a thing called the Williston Star Fund. So what is it? How are you helping entrepreneurs in the community?
Sure. So, quick history too. We found out early on that when we were doing economic development, you've talked about the restaurant, the clothing stores, the mom and pop coffee shops. We were working so hard to build a community, but we realized you can have as many jobs as you want in a community. If you got a place that nobody wants to live, it's not going to do you any good. So there's a quality of life factor there. Looking at small business development that we felt we needed to help and assist with. So, we partner with the regional small business development center office, and we help do with business plans and guidance for some of the young entrepreneurs. What has helped us a lot, this goes back to the early 90s, is that the taxpayers of Williston voted for a 1-cent city sales tax. It was called the Star Fund. Now, at the time that tax was voted on, it was to retire some old debt that was left over from the past that we saw the boom and bust of the late 70s into the early 80s. So that's what it was voted on for. Throughout the years, people realized the value of that 1 penny, so it's been renewed several times. And at one point, it was renewed to where that penny, where three quarters of that 1 penny now goes into what we call infrastructure debt relief. So it helps offset some of the costs to the homeowners when they've got to redo the curb gutter, water and sewer areas around the community.
Whoa. Please pause right there. I want to hear more about this, because one of the things that we cannot stand here in Fargo are these special assessments. So what you're saying is, hey, Chris, we did a 1-cent sales tax. We're taking a piece of that penny and we're putting it towards these special assessments to keep that lower for homeowners. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. 3/4 of that penny, it's we refer to it as infrastructure debt relief. So it's kind of helped to ease, it helps to ease the burden a bit of some of the costs that you're seeing with the special assessments that are out there.
So can you kind of break that down for me? Because boy, that's something I want to see happen in Fargo, because there's specials now in the city. I don't know what they're in Williston, but $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, pretty standard. How is it lowering or mitigating costs for homeowners in Williston?
Well, again, and this might be a great next segment that we talk about sometime, to get our city engineers on here to discuss a little bit about the cost. But I think what you see, the high cost of doing infrastructure improvements, there's a portion, that will go in when you see the final cost. Again, let's say we're going to redo the streets, curb gutter. You look at a portion of that and see what you can offset with what is in the Star Fund of that 3/4 of the penny. And then you help with a certain percentage to just offset the cost. So the homeowner is not going to pay 100% of getting, let's say, the street improved in front of their house. That's where the Star Fund comes in and helps out a little bit.
That's fantastic. And then also using some of this money to help local businesses.
Yeah. So then it changed throughout the years, where we did 3/4 of the penny. Then the other quarter of the penny goes into what we call the Jobs Creation Fund. And that is what we utilize through economic development. We have several programs that businesses can take advantage of. The biggest one that we use, that we like to use, is called the PACE or Flex PACE Interest Buy Down Program. It's a Bank of North Dakota program where we will partner with the Bank of North Dakota. We will partner with the entrepreneur's lead lender, and we will buy down the interest rate off the front end of business startup loans. And so what's good about that is for every dollar we put in, Bank of North Dakota roughly matches us just about $2 in the buy down amount. So, and why is that important? As I try to tell people all the time, it's not, it's not a handout. Because when you see, if you're going to take the risk on starting some of the new businesses out here, there's a lot of high upfront costs that these businesses incur, and just that little something to get them over the hump that first few years, whether it be a lower cost in their interest rate, is going to help them a lot. And we saw that especially during COVID-19. There's a lot of people we talked to, there were new businesses that say, hey, if we hadn't had that Star Fund in play, it would have been a tough roll for us to make it happen. So that really helps us quite a bit. And then go ahead.
Well, just if you don't mind, Shawn, because I think many people may not appreciate what you're saying here. Because what I'm hearing is, says, hey, Chris, if we can take away some of this upfront interest costs from the business owner initially, it improves their cash flow. Now they can have better money to reinvest in the business. They get a better return on capital. Yes?
Yes, that's what we're trying to do with that. Correct.
It's fantastic. Shawn Wenko with the Williston Economic Development with us here on our Williston Economic Development Update every single Thursday. It is really stunning. I was talking to another gentleman out of Colfax that's in economic development recently, and I was bragging to him about Williston and what's going on. He goes, yeah, I know. I was just out there recently. He goes, this is absolutely, it's booming out there. So didn't mean to interrupt you, my friend, but then so maybe just give us some examples of the Star Fund where, hey, Chris, this business came to us, we did the Star Fund, and now X is happening.
Yeah, well, you look at we have a new clothing store in town called Genesis, and I shouldn't say they're new. They've been around for 10 years, but their initial startup, we did an interest buy down loan with them to kind of help start up this clothing store. It's got brand names for everything from Oakley to Under Armour to about anything you can think of. They saw such success, they wanted to expand a couple of years ago when we were starting to redevelop the old airport. They now were one of the first buildings to be constructed in the redevelopment of our old airport property. And I'll tell you this, is you took a business that, again, starting it up, it's pretty tight. When they were able to expand, they were expecting about a 25% increase in sales. They're seeing about a 40% increase, and it hasn't dropped since then. So again, it's just there's examples like that all over where it's the initial kind of help with that, with the low interest loan, help them get through, get started, get rolling. It's paying dividends on the back end, because when you say, okay, an increase in sales by 40%, they're paying that 1 cent city sales tax, so it's going back into the Star Fund. So again, you're seeing a good return on investment.
Yeah, and you're getting some property taxes and some other taxes. I mean, it all kind of comes out in the end, and you get a successful business there. And it's really, I just think, I hope we're doing you justice, Shawn, with what you're doing, because I know you're making a huge, huge impact in the community. So got about 30, 60 seconds left. I'll give you the last word. You want to give it the website? Anything else you want to add, sir?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, the big thing, if anybody, with an entrepreneur, if we're looking at doing a business in the area, they can work with myself or Keith Olson with the Small Business Development Center. You can find all the information about the Star Fund on willistondevelopment.com. Again, the Star Fund, we always do require that there is a consultation with the SBDC, because again, we want to make sure that we set the entrepreneur up for the greatest percentage for success. So there's a required meeting on things like the Star Fund, but any answers prior to that, we sure can answer that at willistondevelopment.com.
And just to be clear, like, this is a grant, right? Like, they don't have to pay this back. The Star Fund's a grant where they're buying down the interest rates and improves their cash flow, right? Right.
Correct. You'll see for us, for Williston, it's a grant. There's other communities that do the interest buy down program. They have a revolving loan fund where it's tacked onto the back of the loan. Right now, our parameters, it really just requires a 1-to-1 match, and all you've got to show with that is the initial investment of what you're doing as an entrepreneur, and that's not hard at all. When you have an entrepreneur, it's going to take out a $2 million loan. That shows the investment is there.
Great stuff, Shawn Wenko, Williston Economic Development.